Hello! Today we are covering the Monster Squad. We will talk about some of the bad, some of the good, and why it's a cult classic. Released on August 14th, 1987 by TriStar Pictures and directed by Fred Decker. Now before we get into the meat and the potatoes of the film, there are spoilers in this video. Now, a quick synopsis. The film follows a group of kids trying to defend their town from the combined might of Dracula, the Mummy, the Gill-Man, and Frankenstein's monster. The kids defend their town while the monsters try to get an amulet and perform a powerful spell. Now, before I get into the good parts of the film, we are going to cover the problems just so we get them out of the way. The first one being, it feels like two different films, in the sense that it feels like it wants to appeal to kids and both teenagers, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it just fails to find an equilibrium, let's say. Second, with a huge cast, it's bound to leave some characters with less time than you would have wanted. For example, the Mummy or the Gill-Man. Those two got shafted the most on the monster side. The Mummy does get taken care of pretty easily and doesn't do much in the film, and the Gill-Man is dispatched just as easily from one shot of a shotgun. Well, I guess he did lift Frankenstein's monster's coffin out of the water and kill two police officers, which is more than what the Mummy did. Third, while the film is short, coming in at just 82 minutes, it does feel like it drags at some points. Lastly, while it isn't necessarily a problem for me, I do feel that it should be said. While it is a PG-13 film, it has more swearing than I would have thought. And if this film released today, it would definitely be rated R just from the swearing. And it's not an egregious amount, but it's enough to be noticed. And some of the scenes can be a little scary, quotation marks, for younger kids if you were planning to see this with a young one. Now let's get into the best part of the film, and that's Count Dracula, played by Duncan Rieger, who knocks it out of the park as the main antagonist of the film, everything from the looks to the threatening power. For example, towards the end of the film, Dracula's making his way through many police officers, and he's dispatching all of them effortlessly, without breaking a sweat. Every time Dracula's on scene, he elevates it. Fun fact, Liam Neeson was almost Dracula. Yeah, the guy from Taken. But he was narrowly beaten out by Duncan Rieger. And there were still plans to use Neeson as a human disguise for Dracula, but the scene was never shot. The next good thing is it is peak 80s cheese, and if you love that 80s cheese, this one's for you. It's got the action, like Dracula throwing a dynamite, to Wolfman getting blown to smithereens, followed by him trying to put himself back together, or his transformation scene, and many others, but you get the point. It's even got a cool character in a leather jacket, to the we can do it attitude of the characters, the references, and the comedy. About the comedy, I enjoyed the comedy, but not all the jokes landed for me, and I have seen that some people online said the comedy was the number one reason that they didn't like it, so your mileage may vary. And my favorite joke was the scary German guy joke. Even after the kids find out he's a nice man, they still keep calling him that, and I thought that was pretty funny. The costumes were all pretty good, and if you didn't know, they actually did not have the permission or the licenses to use the images of the monsters from Universal, so all the costumes had subtle changes compared to their Universal counterparts. Especially the Gill-Man suit, they wanted it to look like the creature from the Black Lagoon, but couldn't get it close enough without breaking copyright infringement. Or like Frankenstein's monster suit, they put the bolts on the forehead instead of the neck. And while being on the topic of the monsters, Frankenstein's monster does exactly what you might have thought. He does switch sides and joins the kids, which is fine. I liked it, and it was a little predictable, but it's fine. He even has a tender moment with Phoebe at the end, where they're both exchanging goodbyes before he's sucked into the black hole. And I like what they did with the Wolfman, where he knows what's happening and he's trying to help, but no one's listening to him. It even has a sad moment involved, where when he's finally killed, he thanks Rudy for killing him, which was a little dark. And speaking of dark things, the scary German guy has a scene where Horace tells him he knows a lot about monsters, and the scary German guy agrees with him, and they show a random close-up of his forearm revealing a tattoo from a concentration camp, which is so random, it threw me off the first time I saw that. Shifting gears to the human characters, they all do their parts well enough. Horace and Rudy stick out the most to me, Horace being the comedic relief, even having some pretty good one-liners. Rudy's the titular 80s cool guy with a leather jacket, He has a couple good moments. He even takes down the mummy, the Wolfman, the three vampire brides. Sheen is the main character, and he works fine. He's the in the monsters character, and I don't dislike him or anything. He works well enough, and that's good enough. Most of the other characters are not really worth mentioning. But that being said, with as many characters as they have, they don't really bog down the film, which is pretty impressive. The Monster Squad is a cult classic for a reason, and while it's not perfect, it has many things that it does good. But if it's a cult classic, why hasn't it been remade yet? Well, there was a remake in the works. In 2008, producer Rob Cohen said there were plans to remake the film, but he didn't want to direct. And in 2010, Michael Bay's Platinum Dunes officially signed on to produce with Cohen to direct, which is a little ironic, with Mark and Brian Gunn on board to do the screenplay. But in 2014, Platinum Dunes producers Brad Fuller and Andrew Form announced that the remake was no longer in development, which is unfortunate. I would have liked to see what it would have been, what the results would have been. But anyways, it is currently on Prime Video and Freevee if you wanted to see it, and if it in any way sounded interesting, go give it a watch. I'd recommend it. Have you seen Monster Squad? Let me know down below. Leave a like and subscribe, or don't. It's an open door policy. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. The next video is going to be about The Hole 2009.